Hello, everyone, and welcome to our event on the future of collaborative spaces. My name is Benjamin Bollman, and I am the CEO of Swissnex in Boston and New York. Swissnex is a global network of science and technology hubs located across the world. We have 6 dedicated locations in Boston, San Francisco, Rio, Bangalore, Shanghai, and Osaka. And we also have a network of scientific counselors based in 19 different Swiss embassies around the world. So we are truly a global network. Our mission is essentially to accelerate the potential of education, research, and innovation to meet the challenges of our time. We do that by connecting people, connecting ideas, connecting resources across geographies, across sectors, across disciplines, and importantly, by turning these connections into collaborations, which is why the topic of today's events is really dear to our hearts. We are joining you today from the office of SOSO here in downtown Boston. SOSO is a multidisciplinary studio made of designers, architects, and creative technologists that creates multisensory experiences across physical and digital spaces. We are here to talk about the future of hybrid collaboration. And this event is a result of really a months-long collaboration between Swissnex and SOSO, with contributions from EPFL in Switzerland, from Vitra, furniture and design company in Switzerland, and with the support of Presence Switzerland. This collaboration was really driven by one key question, which is how can different organizations come together, share resources, and collaborate to reach a common goal or tackle a common issue? And how can we maximize the advantages and the unique qualities of both physical and digital spaces to do this? So this is what we're going to talk about today. Our answer to that question is what we call the collaboration stack, which is the toolkit that we are launching today. And this toolkit is really made for you, for your organizations to collaborate with others across physical and digital spaces. So you will learn about this today. The plan for the event is to start by showing you a short video that we produce to explain a little bit our project. Then we'll move on to talk about the toolkit that we developed, the collaboration stack, and we go through every aspects of the toolkit step by step. So this should last for about half an hour. And we will finally show you digital template that we created on a tool called Figma for you to create your own collaboration stack. We will have Q&A at the end, but if you have any questions in between, don't hesitate to ask them in the chat box. And now we are going to launch the video, so enjoy and see you later.
Okay, everyone, we hope that you enjoyed the video. I'm Brendan Karch, the head of academic engagement at Swissnex Boston. What we're going to do now is we're going to dive into the product that we created from our work together, the collaboration stack. This is a presentation version of the deck that we're about to share with you. We also have a full version of the slide deck that will be available on our website, which we will share with you a little bit later. We'd like to take you now through the problem statement, which I will address, the solution, which our colleague from SOSO, John, will address, and then the various layers of the stack, which Wes from SOSO will address. A reminder that at any time you can please leave any questions in the Q&A window in the chat. Okay, so as the video suggested, this collaboration started in us thinking about the Swissnex space, but it grew into much more. Swissnex is an organization focused on collaboration. We are a hub of international networks in education and innovation. But to what end? At Swissnex post-2020, we're becoming more issue-centric. Science is becoming more issue-centric. Everyone is becoming more issue-centric. We face big global challenges. And global challenges like climate change, pandemics, inequality, call for collective action. We want to accelerate new solutions. And today's knowledge organizations appear better equipped than ever. Individually, we have incredible data, cutting-edge hardware and digital platforms, extensive networks. Yet, no one organization can solve these problems. And here's the crux. True collaboration is hard. Connecting and orchestrating knowledge resources is extremely difficult across organizations. So why doesn't collaboration come more naturally? Well, as we discussed in our collaboration, the obstacles are many. We're often forced to compete against one another for funding, for influence, rather than to cooperate. Our data is often proprietary, locked away. What information we do end up seeing is often filtered through algorithmic biases. Our research findings are clouded by disciplinary silos and jargon. And yes, we do bring truly different values and priorities to the table, but differences are exacerbated by declining trust and lack of imagination. Finally, we've all been thrust into a newly digital world post-2020, and we're tired. We feel caught in the canyon of the physical-digital divide, unable to harness the best qualities of each. These are the big challenges that spurred us on. And so this grew from a question of just using spaces intelligently to using all of our resources collaboratively to orchestrate collective intelligence. These resources include knowledge, people, software, hardware, and yes, spaces. Because in collaborating effectively on global issues, we recognize the key challenge in leveraging our physical and our virtual spaces to their maximum capabilities. Only in so doing can we bring the most participants in and have the most tangible impact in the physical world. So these are the problems that we worked with. And now, to discuss our solution, I hand it over to John Rothenberg, Managing Director at SOSO.
Thanks, Brendan. So for us, this project, just zooming out a bit, was an exercise in imagining the future of collaboration. And we imagined that through the lens of 2020, the pressing health, environmental, and social issues we were all facing. We also were building on the context of 20 years of SwissNex in Boston. So the future is no longer, for us, the future is no longer about building hybrid spaces. Everything is now hybrid. The future is about shareable, on-demand, deployable resources. And collaboration is about configurations of space, technology, ideas, and people. So the result of that is the collaboration stack, a framework for understanding how to build these collaborations, these configurations. We began with this metaphor of the stack. The collaboration stack extends the model of the technology solution stack to all aspects of a solution. In tech, a solution stack is the collection of technologies included in an application. The stack is described as a series of layers, often increasing in abstraction, so from front-end code to database to web server to operating system, or like PHP to MySQL, Apache, and Linux, defining the entire solution stack of a typical web service. Key part about the stack is that the layers are developed independently. They can be open source or third party, shared by others. And the characteristic of a solution stack is it's reconfigurable, it's deployable, it's on demand, and scalable. So what if we thought about all of the resources included in a solution to a global issue as a stack, a shared infrastructure for ideas and action? And here, we imagine these layers to include ideas, people, places, software, and hardware. The stack is arranged in a series of layers or categories of increasing impermanence. It's a framework for understanding the components of a solution and how they relate. It gives you a complete picture of the potential resources. Building a solution is about configuring the resources. Some will be owned, some will be developed, some will be borrowed. Collaboration of the future is about creatively combining, reconfiguring, and developing layers of the stack. It's no longer connected to specific locations, people, or formats. It's about the relationship between the layers. And one organization, institution, or issue doesn't own all the resources. They're shared between. So we imagine a world where all resources are now deployable, on demand, and scalable. That means spaces as well as software, and people as well as ideas and hardware. We view the collaboration stack as a model to orchestrate collective intelligence. Key thing about a stack is that it's not just a series of blocks stacked on one another. The layers are interconnected and they're woven together. Power comes from the composability of interconnected layers, meaning they can be recombined in new configurations. Because of that, it's the interface that connects one layer to another. And each layer needs to serve multiple purposes and have a well-defined interface, allowing it to connect in different configurations. So the challenge in building a stack is about either building the connections or building the interface. If you're working with existing resources, it's about how you connect them. But if you're building a new resource, you also have to think about its interface and how it will connect to other layers. So this is a well-established model in technology, but we haven't been thinking about this when it comes to people and space and knowledge. So next up, I'm going to pass this to my partner, Wes, Associate Director of Technology and Design at SOSO, and he's going to talk about the layers of the stack.
Thank you, John. So central to the collaboration stack is its set of layers. Think of the layers as a collection of configurable resources and relationships. Layers of the stack straddle physical and virtual and exist at different levels of abstraction and temporality, a bit analogous to a tech stack, as John mentioned. They lend themselves to deployability and reconfiguration. And our perspective is that the future issues and design problems will require a comprehensive interleaving of all layers, avoiding the tendency to get stuck in siloed thinking. The 5 core layers, knowledge, ideas, people, Publix, places, spaces, software, tools, and infrastructure, are more or less ordered by increasing permanence. And as a sixth meta layer, Ethos Values operates at a cross-sectional level through each layer, encoding and encouraging principled decision-making. So I'll now step through these layers individually. First layer, knowledge and ideas. The knowledge and ideas layer is composed of action, impact, and collective intelligence. Knowledge and ideas flow as input and output across the stack. It can be thought of as a repository of ideas and perspectives on issues and acts as kind of a currency of exchange. Its recursive nature allows for storage, recall, repurposing, remixing. Knowledge is amplified through continued diversification and recontextualization. So with the democratization of knowledge, collaborators can push towards common goals. The knowledge layer captures and encodes these globally sourced viewpoints, making accessible different ways of knowing and varied perspectives across diverse domains. The flow of ideas must be playful, generative but not prescriptive, data-informed but not hindered by prior ways of seeing. For example, artist collectives, open source knowledge bases, idea incubators, cloud brainstorming platforms are just some of the tools and structures in proximity to the knowledge layer. Next layer, people and Publix. The people and Publix layer is about orchestrating contribution of ideas, both at an individual level and from the collective intelligence. So at a high level, we imagine 3 different nested levels of participation: curators, members, and communities. Curators offer specificity by temporarily centering their own viewpoints on a rotating basis. And members have a longer time frame involvement with thinking about issues and are a subset of a larger community or context from which additional perspectives can be continuously sourced. The permeability of sourcing knowledge from the public is that any visitor can ultimately become a contributor. And so ultimately, accessibility is important for achieving the democratization of knowledge. Through the permeability of input, dispersed and siloed groups enter the same collaborative space, engaging in conversation and co-creation. And this co-creation helps people understand diplomacy and consensus building by directly participating in the process. The next layer is places and spaces, the primarily physical side of the collaboration stack. In the stack, physical space is ephemeral. Physical spaces become on-demand containers for where collaboration happens. Virtual spaces offer a durable commons and exist as always on. In a way, physical space augments more persistent virtual environments. So while studying and imagining this new ephemeral role of physical space, we looked back at Swissnex's founding, where the virtual was conceived as kind of a value-add augmentation to their physical headquarters, it allowing for like ambient remote collaboration across time zones. And at the time, the internet was a novel tool really to overcome these physical divides. But returning to the same context in the present day, a much different relationship between physical and virtual emerges. The internet as a persistent layer allows for space to be more flexible and configurable, serving as a more on-demand platform in support of the new normalized virtual collaboration. And the internet becomes a backbone for this serendipitous use of these spaces. The power of physical space involves its ability to augment virtual environments and can work to disrupt some of the unique virtual issues like filter bubbles, depersonalization, and the absence of context. And we imagine, for instance, spatial templates which can be deployed adaptively to local contexts to get on-the-ground input. And as designers, we have the ability to define a system that adapts to and incorporates its context. Pop-up spaces, toolkits, and other on-demand structures kind of fit into this model. Virtual collaboration can be built into the fabric of spaces, allowing them to be truly hybrid environments. Hybrid spaces are always on, they're multi-directional, and they support spontaneous flows of people and ideas. Always on spaces have the opportunity to connect communities to facilitate imagination, observation, sharing, discussion. So the right set of tools can transform any place into a portable, collaborative environment. Now for the fourth layer, software and tools. The software and tools layer can be thought of as a dematerialized headquarters, supplying digital platforms, toolkits, services, and other digital resources that orchestrate the interoperability across layers. It offers a range of reusable tools, open source and in-house, that facilitate collaboration across time and space. Software is rooted in abstraction, modularity, reconfiguration, and therefore has high flexibility and growth potential. A software layer beyond the basic runtime logic could provide simple interfaces for remixing connections and resources on the fly. At layer 5, we have hardware and infrastructure. Hardware and infrastructure is about low-level enablement. Beyond software, it's perpetual, decentralized, and global. Think devices, data centers, communication infrastructure, storage and compute resources. These resources span localities and primarily seek scalability, reliability, uptime. The infrastructure layer acknowledges that beyond digital tools and services is a footprint in the physical world with geographic implications. Such services are ultimately tied to local resources, governing bodies, and questions of resource efficiency, all while having to stay globally available. As an example feature, it could be developed to store a history of operations within the stack, archiving and reemerging past experiences like snapshots. And lastly, I want to cover the meta layer of the stack, ethos and values. The ethos layer permeates every configuration of the stack and corresponding human actions with principled decision-making. As a set of guiding principles, the ethos layer orients actions while promoting equity, transparency, democratic participation, and openness to new ideas. Ultimately, the stack is pulling together a diverse group of collaborators who operate across values and cultural norms. So the ethos layer of the stack has to be supportive of a plurality of perspectives and visions. And that concludes a fairly quick dive into each of the stack layers. I'm going to hand it back over to Brendan.
Great, Wes. Thank you very much for that presentation. So my job is to conclude the stack, and I want to give you zoom out a little bit and just give you a very basic sense of what we've tried to create here, or what we have created. What we've created is a toolkit for collaboration. It's something your organization can use today or tomorrow. And really, there's 3 key steps to how this toolkit for collaboration works. The first step is that you find collaborative partners and you each map out your resources according to these 5 layers. So you each figure out what knowledge you can provide, that's the first layer, what people and audiences you have access to, the second layer, what spaces you have, what software you can use, and what hardware you can use. Those are the rest of the layers. And once you've mapped out those layers, you can then combine your resources, put them on the same stack. That's what the stack is. It's a map of the resources that you and all the organizations you collaborate with bring to the table. And once you've got that map in the stack, that's when you can start connecting the dots in new ways, saying, okay, we're going to use my organization's software, your organization's data set, and another organization's audience, for example, to create a configuration and a solution that wasn't possible otherwise if we were just working as a single organization. That's what we're trying to achieve with the stack. And the slide deck that we just showed you is a presentation of how we think each of these layers can be thought about and used most successfully. So to conclude, I want to just remind you of the 2 key motivating factors that led us to create this collaboration stack. First, we noticed how 2020 had accelerated trends already in place in the shift from physical to digital spaces. And now that we're all on Zoom, the question was, where had this left physical space? And how can we make the most effective use of the unique qualities of both physical and virtual spaces? These questions drove us to consider the future of hybrid spaces. Second, we're observing and participating in a shift away from techno-solutionism to issue centrism. We feel the era of tech or science saviorism has passed. Instead, we're interested in how we can combine our tools and resources to address big global challenges. And we realize that to do this, we must combine all types of resources, not just space or software, but also combine our knowledge, our audiences, and our networks. It is through this resource sharing that we can create new creative configurations of resources across organizations in order to amplify our collective intelligence. So that's the stack. But what should we or what should you do with it? The stack is not the final word. This slide deck is not a static product. It is a call to action. It is a toolkit that you can use, augment, rearrange, and adapt to your own cases. And that's why we're taking the following steps going forward. First, we're using this stack ourselves. Swissnex and SOSO are planning our first live collaboration case using the collaboration stack as our guiding method. Our challenge is one we both know well from Boston: underused urban spaces, and the linked crisis in housing. We are actively seeking collaborative partners to actually use this stack. So if you have a passion in this space, please reach out to us. And if you have other uses for the stack, we'd love to hear from you. Second, the way we're moving forward is we have openly published all of the resources from the stack. You are free to use and adapt them as you wish. You can visit our website, www.swissnex.org/Boston/the-stack. We will put that link in the chat window. And here on our stack website, you'll find the video that we showed you during this link, the full version of the stack, and you'll also find our Figma template. And that brings me to my third and final point. During this creative process, we used Figma, a collaborative interface design tool. And we decided to create an openly accessible Figma tool, a template. Basically, we've created the ability for you to build your own stack, to have an ease of entry into the collaboration stack, and use this tool for your own collaborations just by filling in some details on this Figma template. And so to see what that looks like, I am now going to turn it over to Mia Zaidan. She is a design technologist here at SOSO, and she will show you the stack in action, a hypothetical case study, and also the Figma template. Thanks. Take it away, Mia.
Thank you, Brandon. So yes, we built a tool on Figma that teams can use to build and deploy their stack in order to tackle global challenges collaboratively. Oops. Sorry, my mic fell. So to see the stack in action, I will walk you through a hypothetical case study that will provide some context on how the stack works. And again, it's a hypothetical case study that uses the tool. I will then show you the actual tool. So in this hypothetical case study, we look at the challenge, which is mainly about the fact that during the pandemic, remote work caused urban spaces to sit unused. So the first step is to establish an understanding of who the team members are by writing down their names, their profession, and then a color will represent their contributions throughout the workshop. So they set the stage by answering a couple of questions about what their opinion of the future of underused and abandoned urban spaces look like, or what are the challenges that they can think of. Next, they start mapping the most pressing challenges and connecting them to each other, and then engage in an open discussion to align on a common challenge that they can solve together. Here, for example, their central challenge is to find new uses for abandoned or underutilized spaces that can benefit the entire community and drive future growth. Along with the challenge, they also share their values, and these two elements will be the anchors to their stack. These values inform a shared goal, which in this case study is to convert 5% of unused commercial space in the central business district into multidisciplinary, multi-purpose artistic and community centers. Now comes the stack. So here is where the collaborators begin brainstorming with their own teams what resources they can provide for each layer of the stack. So as Wes walked you through, we have 5 layers: knowledge and ideas, people and Publix, places and spaces, software and tools, and hardware and infrastructure. So the first step in building the stack is to answer the first question about knowledge and ideas. What research and ideas can you bring to the table? So each participant puts down one answer to the question in their respective colored boxes. I won't walk you through every layer, but they go through all of these different layers from their different perspectives. And so they answer the following questions: what human resources and what networks can you activate? What physical and virtual spaces can you provide? What tools and platforms could you contribute? And what other durable and essential resources could you contribute? So when this is all mapped out, we can start deploying the stack that was built. So collaborators begin to mix ideas and brainstorm all possible combination outcomes. They have a sketchboard on which they select the resource combinations that they want to explore, and then they start sketching out ideas of how this can be deployed into a solution to the challenge. So the little cards that they've put together become units that get reconfigured and recombined. For example, here, one solution that came out of this is to create an on-demand art space. So they arrange these cards representing stack layers, showing the resources that they selected mapped out. And they also show how the sketches lead to actionable goals that could be acted upon. They establish a timeline for deploying these resources, creating a blueprint for immediate, medium-term, and long-term collaboration. So the exercise will lead to multiple solutions, and they can keep on shuffling these cards to come up with like different combinations. Another solution here that we have is to give more space to local small businesses. So the same 25 cards can be repurposed and used in different ways. The cards are the starting point, but then they're expanded upon by sketching potential outcomes of their combination and putting everything into an actionable timeline. So this is a pre-filled example, but we also built a flexible, reconfigurable tool with an instruction set that anyone can download and use from Figma. So let me give you a quick overview of how this works. Stop share. So here we are on Figma. So Figma is a collaborative design tool like Miro or a cloud version of Adobe Illustrator, and it's a way that multiple people can edit a visual file at the same time. So it becomes a really valuable tool for hybrid collaboration. So what we've built here is kind of what we walk through now, but at a more reconfigurable state. So once you download the community file on Figma, and the link, as Brendan mentioned, is on the website, you can start, one second, you can start pre-filling these fields with what the theme of your workshop is. You have a small instruction set for each of these slides. And let's say, for example, the participants here are Wes and John, Benjamin, and Brandon. And so basically this tool updates the fields on all the other slides, making it possible for people to just fill in and just keep moving, and all of that updates itself. Same here for these little cards. Let's say someone says the collaboration stack for the first idea, then they won't have to refill it for each of these slides. They automatically update, and they can just track all of their answers by the end of it. Again, you have a sketchboard here where you select the cards that you've put together, you map them together, and then here is where you deploy your solution and come up with actionable goals that you have set on the timeline. To guide you through each of these, we have provided some instructions for each of the slides that you can read through. Very thorough. It gives you some insight on how to use Figma for people who are not familiar with it, and they also give you some context on what's happening on the slide. So that's it for the tool. I'll hand it over back to Brandon, and he will take your questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Mia. Well, I think to everyone's amazement, we are right on time. We've actually left ourselves about 15 minutes for questions. So now we really encourage you to leave questions or comments in the Q&A. Guess what? Nobody has been moving for a while, and so our lights actually went out in the studio. Everybody wave, woohoo! Okay, there we go. Technology, always our friend, right? Please feel free to leave questions or comments in the Q&A. We already had a comment that came in from Eric Gunter, who said he loved how the shared resources were becoming visual, reconfigurable building blocks. Thank you very much, Eric. I do actually have a question and a comment to start that maybe we can discuss a little bit as other people type in their questions. So, on the one hand, we talk about the future of hybrid collaboration in these spaces. But on the other hand, and this was a struggle for us, how do we best present this information and what format do we use? And guess what? We're all on Zoom in a Zoom webinar, right? And there's this real friction that we have or that we're feeling about how and when does the technology catch up and what kinds of platforms can we actually use to make hybrid collaboration a reality so that we're not just always in our Zoom windows for the next 10 or 20 years. So I wonder if anybody wants to have any comments about sort of the technological interfaces that they think we should be developing in the future to make hybrid collaboration feel authentic, feel real and real time, and really give us the best possible use of our virtual spaces. I've stumped everyone.
Yeah. Well, I think we're seeing bits and pieces of it even today, and we don't have to imagine that far into the future, that distant from what we're used to. I mean, we kind of lived that hybrid experience through this project, and Figma for us is a sign of one of these kind of possible futures. And we're into Figma, but there's numerous tools that work this way. And it begins probably with things like Google Docs or Office in the cloud, but we started to design and work in two-dimensional design space, but in a collaborative way. And it made everyone feel like a participant, an equal participant, regardless of whether they were in the same room or remote. And we still haven't gotten over the gap of sort of the conversational insights and the body language that you will have in person. But I think we're starting to bridge the gap in terms of being able to contribute effectively, even when you're not in the room.
I think one key thing about Figma as a platform for some of these new ways of collaborating, moving beyond the grid of videos, is that, of course, you're operating in two-dimensional space, but you also see where everyone is. So it does truly feel like some sort of like virtual version of a room, because you kind of get a real-time update of like where people are moving, and that really helps like to position yourself in a place and to be able to move around and see where you are in relation to other people. I think is really interesting.
Yeah, just adding to that, what Wes is speaking about is when you're using a tool like Figma, you will see everyone else's cursor labeled, and they move around almost like individuals in a space, right? You feel the presence of everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we all struggled when we were designing this event. We talked a lot about what format we were actually going to use for this event. And we thought about having all of you, all the guests, join on Figma. But we realized that there are, real practical challenges to a learning curve, and we didn't want everybody to be having a learning curve on a product that they may or may not know while they're doing this. But I think that when you're entering more durable collaborations, I think that tools like Figma really are useful. And I think, as John has already said, it really has changed the way they collaborate among themselves as an organization, but also with their partners, having it be a more iterative process of going back and forth rather than just taking the brief, working in themselves, and then presenting a final product. It really allows for more iteration along the way. Good, so we have a few other questions. I'm not sure, one of them was, did we forget the Metaverse layer? I'm not sure if that's a serious question or not.
Whose question was that?
Jonas Brunsvig from Swissnex.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the future my future for hybrid digital physical collaboration is not the metaverse. I think that's a kind of very superficial understanding, and that completely kind of misinterprets the value of space. It also fails to recognize that we all are, at least currently, human bodies existing in some environment. So whether or not we're in this shared physical space, we are in a physical space. And that's one of our philosophies around everything being hybrid, is that you have to consider it's not necessarily that you're all operating within the same container. You're not in the same room, but you're in a room. And to sort of ignore that, put on a headset, and just sort of imagine that you're in some sort of virtual space, I don't think that's what the future of collaboration is about.
Great, yeah, thanks. So another question that came in is, how is the stack that you are proposing compare with existing collaborative approaches? Do you see it as a formalization or distillation of existing collaborative practices? I guess, in other words, what are we adding to the conversation around collaboration?
Maybe I can try to respond to that one. I think before going through the process of building the stack, I was imagining collaboration in the sense of, let's meet on Zoom and collaborate. That was my mental image of collaboration. And I think we're trying to explode that idea of collaboration and to say, oh, we don't only have ourselves on Zoom, we have resources that we don't think about as collaborative resources, like our data, like our softwares, like our ideas, our audiences and networks. And we often think of those resources as proprietary, as we said in the beginning of the event. But I think it's the stack is an attempt to emancipate ourselves from that idea and really try to decenter our organizations and to really think about how to put everything we have and all resources we have at hand towards a shared goal with other organizations. So in a way, it's an emancipation of thinking about how people think of collaboration usually, because if that makes any sense. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, we just had a comment come in that I think is a great metaphor. It said, the stack is like a potluck dinner where everyone lists the ingredients in their fridge and then everyone joins up to cook up some crazy new recipes. So I think that's a great metaphor. So another question came in over the chat window, which is, who do you see as the particular end user of this collaborative platform? Is it more an open source community builder to brainstorm? Or is it a tool for organizations, for stakeholders to organize inputs and be able to decide on the next stages?
It'd be both. It can work for large organizations, but it can also be more of a bottom-up community tool. Because of how abstract the people in Publix layer looks at inputs like from a wide variety of sources. So we hope that the stack can scale across those kind of sizes of organizations and number of people participating.
At Swissnex, we hope that the stack can become useful for our stakeholders, which are what we have called knowledge organizations in the slide deck. So, but we're thinking of knowledge organizations as universities, as Swissnex-like organizations, as think tanks, innovation-driven companies, cultural institutions, and so forth. So those are the organizations that have resources and specific knowledge and specific people they can share towards solving a common issue.
Great. So another question that came in is a little bit more of a technical question about the kinds of hybrid spaces that we're imagining. I think Figma was already mentioned, but somebody asked if you have any thoughts in relation to 2D versus 3D virtual spaces, say Mozilla Hubs versus GatherTown. Maybe this is a question for the more technically oriented and minded folks among us.
I think the physical spaces or the collaborative spaces, hybrid spaces, can be both 2D or 3D. We imagine that like the ideal is that multiple physical spaces, virtual spaces, so 2D spaces can be seamlessly linked together in a collaborative session to feel as kind of one larger space. And then for hybrid spaces, they don't just have to be permanent buildings or storefronts, for instance. There could be much more deployable. We imagine like, mailing out toolkits, for instance, that could instantly turn any space into a connected hybrid space. And of course, just the act of us all carrying around our cell phones really makes any space like immediately hybrid. And so I think there's kind of a range of ways you can convert these spaces to meet those goals, yeah.
And I believe it's less about if it's a 2D or a 3D space, but more about what it enables the people to do in that space. Whether it's, for example, Figma enables people on a 2D space, but we can have another 2D space that's less enabling for collaboration. And same for 3D spaces. If there is not the right tools for communicating and sharing ideas, then it might not be as powerful as when these things are present.
Yeah, great. So and time for a couple of more questions. A question came in that you had told me that you are also planning to redesign the current physical Swissnex collaboration space to make it even more hybrid work friendly. So are there any concrete changes that we'll be doing at Swissnex based on the insights gained while developing the stack?
So in fact, we already started changing the Swissnex space and thinking of it much more as a place to gather people and to have intimate in-person experiences, maybe smaller scale than we used to do before, because we used to have big events with 50 to 100 people in the space. But now I think it's much more about bringing a curated audience together, having a clubby experience, an intimate experience, something we can do in a hybrid manner as well, because some of that discussion we can stream it live, for example, as we do today, and then continue the discussion closed door when it's over. So we have a little concept for the Swissnex space called the Media Lounge, and we transformed the first floor into this communal lounge that has some media capabilities as well.
Great, thanks. So we really have time just for one more question, and so I'll combine a couple of questions that came in. And they're really about, what does the future of the stack look like? Will it be constantly updated? And how do you think this tool will evolve and adapt with new challenges and new technologies? So where do we go from here? What does the future of this tool look like?
I could start. I think that the stack is really just a way of organizing your thoughts. It's a framework for thinking about all of the resources or all of the components in a solution. And it was the result of starting with a single question and then sort of zooming out to understand the full context of it, and then starting to look at case studies and how they fit together, and kind of a way of organizing trends and research, and then the actual resources that you would combine. So what we've created is a starting point, I believe. And because it's a Figma tool, it's open and you can take it and you can branch it. And I think the nature of the stack is that it's collaborative, it's changing, it's deployable, it's reconfigurable. So to me, it's about using this first as a mental model, and second as a way, an actual toolkit to run workshops, and then iterate through it. And like any tool, any piece of software, think about it as, version 1 of many versions to come. It will fork, it will change, it will transform, but at least it starts us looking at these issues from a real zoomed out view and starting to think of all of the interrelated parts.
Yeah, I think our goal here was to plant a seed that we hope you will use, adapt, harvest, replant in your own ways, grow, adapt, and really turn it into something that is useful for your organization and your collaborations. So I believe it is the 12 o'clock witching hour, at least here on the East Coast. So we want to thank everyone for joining and participating, and we really would love to hear from you. Please contact us with your thoughts. Please visit our landing page where we have the video and the resources and stuff that you can attend. Finally, we want to thank SOSO for this long-term collaboration and for letting us use their beautiful space, the Swissnex team, and we especially want to thank the people who are involved in this but could not be part of the event today. Dalma Fedossi from SOSO and Jonas Brunschwig from Swissnex. We also want to thank our collaborators at EPFL, at Vitra Furniture and Design, and we want to thank the support that we got of Présence Suisse PRS Switzerland for this project. So thank you. We hope to hear from you in the future, and have a great day, everyone. Thanks.